April 1984. A quiet suburban neighborhood in the San Francisco Bay Area. A scream echoes through the night. A door slams shut. The calm is shattered. This is the beginning of a terror that will last for over a year. Richard Ramirez, later known as the Night Stalker, begins a killing spree that will leave at least 15 people dead. His first known murder occurs in April 1984, though it is not connected to him until 2009. Over the next 14 months, Ramirez will strike across the region, leaving fear in his wake. He will earn the nicknames the Night Stalker and the Walk-In Killer. His crimes are brutal, varied, and often committed in the dead of night. The investigation into his crimes will take years, but eventually, Ramirez will be arrested in August 1985. The nightmare will not end there. February 29th, 1960, was the day Richard Ramirez entered the world. Born in El Paso, Texas, he was the youngest of 5 children to Mexican immigrants Mercedes Munoz and Julian Tapia Ramirez. His early years were marked by instability and frequent abuse. His father, Julian, was known to be violent, and Ramirez suffered physical abuse from a young age. By the time he was 10, he had already begun using drugs, and by his early teens, he was showing signs of brain damage. Ramirez's older cousin, a Vietnam War veteran with schizophrenia, played a significant role in shaping his interests. This cousin often spoke about war crimes and violence, and at the age of 15, Ramirez witnessed him kill his wife. These experiences left a lasting impact on Ramirez, influencing his fascination with the macabre and violence. As a teenager, Ramirez developed a strong interest in Satanism and the occult. These beliefs would later play a role in his criminal behavior. By the time he was 22, he had moved to California and was already using cocaine. His troubled past would soon lead him into a path of destruction that would terrorize entire communities. April 1984. A quiet suburban neighborhood in the San Francisco Bay Area. A door opens, then closes. Silence. Inside, a small unmarked house, a man enters. He is not yet known as Richard Ramirez. His name will not be connected to the crime until nearly 2 decades later. This was Ramirez's first known murder. The victim was a woman. The crime scene showed signs of forced entry, and the attack was brutal. No fingerprints were left behind. No witnesses came forward. For years, the murder remained unsolved. Investigators had no suspect, no leads. The case would not be linked to Ramirez until 2009, when new evidence and a re-examination of old records finally connected the crime to the man who would soon be known as the Night Stalker. The investigation into this murder, like so many others, would remain open for far longer than anyone expected. But the trail would eventually lead to a name, Richard Ramirez. From April 1984 to August 1985, Richard Ramirez left a trail of fear across greater Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area. Over 14 months, he committed at least 15 murders, each marked by violence and chaos. His weapons ranged from handguns and knives to a machete, a tire iron, and a claw hammer. Ramirez often tortured his victims, punching, pistol whipping, and strangling them. In one case, he stomped a woman to death in her sleep. Survivors described being degraded and humiliated, adding to the terror of his attacks. In 1989, Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The judge who sentenced him called his actions cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond any human understanding. He was arrested in August 1985 after a year of terror that left communities in fear and confusion. Ramirez remained on death row until his death in June 2013 from complications of B-cell lymphoma. Yet, even now, one question remains. How many lives were truly lost to Ramirez's rampage? Richard Ramirez was a man who left terror in his wake, not just through the violence he inflicted, but through the calculated cruelty that defined his crimes. Unlike many serial killers who follow a pattern, Ramirez seemed to revel in unpredictability. His methods varied, his weapons numerous, and his victims left with no sense of security. He struck during the night, often entering homes with a chilling confidence. He did not simply kill. He played with his victims, sometimes leaving them alive to suffer to fear. He bound some with ropes, shocked others with live wires, and in one case, he stomped on a woman while she slept. His presence was marked by fear, by the knowledge that he could be anywhere at any time. Survivors recalled his laughter, his taunts, his eyes filled with something monstrous. He took pleasure in the chaos he created, in the power he wielded over those who had no way to stop him. When the trial finally came in 1989, the court heard of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The judge described Ramirez's actions as cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond any human understanding. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming evidence, Ramirez never showed remorse. His crimes had spread across 2 regions, lasting nearly 2 decades in the making, and leaving behind a legacy of fear that would not be forgotten. What investigators could not find, however, was any sign of a signature, no symbols, no ritualistic markings, only the scars left on the victims and the communities he had terrorized. A table displays replicas of the weapons used in Ramirez's crimes. Among them, a handgun, a machete, a claw hammer, a tire iron, and a variety of knives. Each object was selected with intent. Each was used in the commission of violence. The brutality of his methods was as varied as the weapons he wielded. Some victims were struck with the blunt force of a tire iron. Others were slashed with a machete. At least one was shocked with a live electrical cord. The tools he used reflected the range of his violence. The claw hammer, for instance, was used in the attack on a woman who survived. The handgun was used in multiple murders, often at close range. The weapons were not just tools, they were extensions of his intent. They allowed him to exert control, to inflict pain, to leave a mark. Investigators cataloged each weapon recovered from his crimes, tracing their use to specific victims. The variety of weapons used in the attacks suggests a lack of hesitation, a willingness to adapt, to improvise. In the hands of Ramirez, each object became a weapon of terror. In a courtroom setting, newly unsealed testimony from Ramirez's preliminary hearing reveals that he made a chilling claim. He told a jailer that he was a super criminal who had killed 20 people in California. The words carried the same weight as the violence he had unleashed across the state. However, this number remains unverified. Official records confirm at least 15 murders, but Ramirez's boast adds another layer of horror to an already grim legacy. His confidence in the hearing reflected the arrogance that had defined his crimes. He did not just kill, he taunted, he terrorized, and he left behind a trail of fear. Yet the true number of his victims remains one of the many unanswered questions surrounding his case. Investigators have never confirmed whether Ramirez's claim was an exaggeration or if there were indeed more victims than officially recorded. That uncertainty lingers, a shadow over the evidence and the memories of those who survived. By August 1, 1985, the search for the Night Stalker had become a full-scale operation. Law enforcement agencies across California worked together, sharing leads and forensic evidence as they tried to piece together the identity of the man who had terrorized two of the state's largest regions. The investigation was driven by the sheer number of crimes attributed to Ramirez, with at least 15 confirmed victims. His attacks spanned from the greater Los Angeles area to the San Francisco Bay Area, leaving a trail of fear and confusion in his wake. What made Ramirez particularly elusive was his pattern of striking in the dark, often leaving no witnesses and little physical evidence behind. His crimes were marked by brutality, and his ability to move between cities made it difficult for investigators to predict his next move. Despite the challenges, the coordinated effort by police departments led to a breakthrough that would end the nightmare for the communities he had terrorized. The case, which had lasted nearly a year, was finally solved when Ramirez was arrested in August 1985. His capture marked the end of a period of intense fear and uncertainty for residents who had lived in constant dread of the Night Stalker's next attack. The arrest came after a year of fear and uncertainty. In August 1985, Richard Ramirez was taken into custody. His capture followed a combination of physical evidence and witness accounts that finally linked him to the crimes. The investigation had stretched across cities and months, but this was the moment law enforcement had been waiting for. The case was officially marked as solved with his arrest. For years, the Night Stalker had left a trail of terror, but now the trail had ended. Ramirez would face the full weight of the law. In 1989, he was convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The sentence was severe, reflecting the scale and brutality of his crimes. His actions had left a deep scar on the communities he terrorized. Yet, even with his capture, questions remained. The exact number of victims he was responsible for was still uncertain. The investigation had closed, but not all the details had been fully uncovered. In 1989, the courtroom became the stage for one of the most harrowing legal confrontations in American criminal history. Richard Ramirez, the man who had terrorized the streets of Southern California with a reign of terror spanning nearly a year, faced the full weight of the law. The charges against him were staggering: 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The jury, tasked with delivering justice to the victims and their families, listened as the prosecution laid out the brutal details of Ramirez's crimes. His actions had left a trail of fear and suffering in their wake, marking an era of chaos that few could forget. The judge, delivering the sentence, described Ramirez's actions as embodying a level of cruelty and inhumanity that left no room for leniency. As the trial came to a close, it was clear that Ramirez had not only taken lives, but had also left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who had survived his violence. The legal process, though necessary, was but one chapter in a story that had already left deep scars on a community still trying to heal. On June 7, 2013, Richard Ramirez died at San Quentin State Prison from complications related to B-cell lymphoma. His death came nearly 2 decades after he was sentenced to death in 1989 for 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The sentence was the culmination of a legal process that saw Ramirez convicted of crimes spanning a year-long terror campaign across Southern California. The courtroom in 1989 had heard the full scope of his violence, brutal, calculated, and unrepentant. Ramirez showed no remorse, and his actions were described by the judge as exhibiting cruelty and viciousness beyond comprehension. Yet the legal system moved forward, delivering a verdict that was both a reckoning and a final chapter in a case that had gripped the public for years. Ramirez's death in 2013 left the legal process unfinished. But the victims' families found some measure of closure. His legacy, however, remains one of fear and violence, etched into the history of a dark period in American crime. In 1989, Richard Ramirez stood before a judge and was sentenced to death for 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The sentence was carried out in the form of a death penalty, but the actual execution did not take place for nearly 25 years. He was transferred to San Quentin State Prison, where he remained on death row, awaiting the final step in his sentence. During that time, he lived in a cold, sterile environment, isolated from the world outside the prison walls. Despite the legal process moving forward, Ramirez remained alive, his fate hanging in the balance for years. In 2013, Ramirez's sentence remained unchanged, but his health began to decline. He was diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma, a type of cancer that would ultimately claim his life. On June 7, 2013, Richard Ramirez died at San Quentin State Prison, still awaiting the execution that had been ordered nearly 25 years earlier. His death marked the end of a legal process that had spanned more than 2 decades. But it also left many questions unanswered. June 7, 2013. Inside San Quentin State Prison, the man who once instilled terror across California passed away quietly, not by the hand of justice, but by the slow advance of illness. Richard Ramirez, who had spent more than 30 years behind bars, succumbed to complications from B-cell lymphoma. His death marked the end of a life that had left an indelible mark on the people he terrorized. Convicted in 1989 of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, and numerous sexual assaults, Ramirez never showed remorse for the destruction he caused. In his final hours, he was alone, his crimes long in the past, yet his name still carried the weight of fear. The Night Stalker was no more, but the darkness he left behind would not be easily erased. The names on this plaque are etched in memory, a reminder of the lives cut short by one man's violence. Richard Ramirez claimed to have killed 20 people in California, though this number remains unconfirmed. His crimes left a mark far beyond the victims themselves, shaping the way law enforcement hunted serial killers for years to come. He was never remorseful, never sorry. Even in his final days, as illness took his life in 2013. The fear he inspired lingered. His legacy is not just in the terror he caused, but in the way his case changed the pursuit of justice. The Night Stalker is gone, but the questions he left behind remain. The exact number of victims attributed to Richard Ramirez remains a subject of debate among investigators and historians. Ramirez once claimed to have killed 20 people in California, but this number has never been confirmed by official records. Official accounts list 13 confirmed murders, though some of the crimes he is known for may not be directly linked to him. The discrepancy between his claims and the documented evidence continues to puzzle researchers. Some of the cases he was connected to were later reassigned to other suspects. Despite the uncertainty, one fact remains clear. Ramirez's crimes left an indelible mark on the communities he terrorized. What is still unknown is how many lives were truly lost to the Night Stalker. The case is closed. Richard Ramirez is dead. His crimes were solved, but the number of victims he left behind remains uncertain. Official records confirm 13 murders, yet Ramirez once told a jailer he had killed 20 people in California. That number has never been verified. His victims were not just statistics, they were individuals, each with a name, a family, a life cut short. The exact count may never be known, but the impact of his actions still echoes through the neighborhoods he terrorized. Today, the Night Stalker is gone, but the mystery of how many he truly took remains unanswered. Subscribe if you want the next case broken down the same way.